If I can ask each of you to, we'll start with David, share a little bit of your story and whatever you would like to share with us, and then for like 5 minutes or so, and then we'll have questions and answers at the end. Am I missing something? Did they tell you that we're going to be doing something in a different way?
We didn't know there was a speaker either.
Oh, this is great.
Just walking up the street now. Sure.
Okay, thank you. If you could use those mics so we can get it on video.
Okay, hi. My name is David D. Bennett, and my husband Matt is here in the front, and I'm super excited to be here. We had the pleasure of working with Terry for our first child, Luke, who's up to be.
We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Is the microphone on, or should I just talk closer?
Hang on a second.
You want to do
Hang on a second. Hang on a second. We're going to turn the microphones on. Hang on. All right, try it again.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. So anyway, my name is David D. Bennett, and my husband Matt and I are fortunate. We have 2 boys. We have a son named Luke, who's about to be 2, and a son named Joseph, who's 5 months old, and not really sleeping through the night yet, so it's exhausting, but we're excited. We had the pleasure of working with Terry for our first son, and maybe I'll just tell a bit of my story. Excited to be here, and happy to kind of answer whatever questions anyone has. I really wish that we knew that this organization existed when we started the process. People ask us all the time about, well, tell me about this thing you guys work with, this person you didn't know, an egg donor and a surrogate to have a baby, and I'm like, that sounds kind of strange. And for us it all started, and this is kind of silly, but with Lady Gaga, and the reason it's kind of silly is because we were at the Lady Gaga's concert. We live in Oakland, and we were at the Coliseum, and we bumped into friends that we hadn't seen in a while. They invited us to their wedding, and up until that point, Matt and I were thinking, we always wanted kids, and we were thinking about adoption, and we were going through the process to just learn more and kind of investigate, and we didn't really think about surrogacy until at that wedding, at the reception, there were 3 other couples, all gay men, who all had kids through surrogacy. We're like, this is really weird. So we started talking to them and learned more about it, and thought, oh, these are real people. There's amazing women out there who are happy to carry children to help men have babies. And so we started the process. We met with 4 different agencies down in Southern California. We spent about 4 hours with each of them, asking lots of questions to try to understand what it was all about. Then found an agency that we liked, and worked with another agency to find an egg donor, which was a really strange process for us. It was kind of like online dating. We're both lucky that both of our families are local and have been really supportive, and so we just essentially printed out the profiles of 7 different women, and then asked our friends, our parents and sisters and folks to say, hey, what do you guys think? What should we go with? It was just really a strange process, but super exciting. So we found an amazing woman from the Midwest who was willing to be our egg donor, and that's how we had then our first son, Luke. And then we always knew we wanted to have more than 1 child, and so we worked with the same agency again, CSP, Center for Surrogate Parenting in Southern California, and we were matched with our second surrogate, Laura, faster than we thought it would take, but the surrogates with our agency choose the couples that they work with, so you just never really know. And we were lucky that we had a second boy, and so I don't want to ramble on too much, but again, happy to be here and happy to answer any questions and help however we can. So there's a sign in the back, 2 minutes left. Anyway, I'll pass to Terry.
I'm Terry. I started out initially in the fertility world as an egg donor initially, and then I was a traditional surrogate for a same-sex couple on the East Coast, and then obviously I was Matt and David's gestational surrogate. And they were both really, one of the most life-changing experiences I've ever had, and it was just really amazing. And I'm really glad to be part of this and answer any questions.
My name is Dave Chandler, and every journey that leads you down the surrogacy journey is unique. And if I tell you our whole story and our whole journey, I could be here an hour. My husband Jeff is not here. We have 2 boys through surrogacy. Our oldest is 11 years old, and our youngest is 7. Our youngest has a basketball game, so we had to make a choice. So I'm glad to be here and talk to you about our journey. Every journey is so unique. My simple advice to you is to keep a journal, because it's a twisting, turning, wonderful, scary ride. So in a nutshell, our oldest son, Jacob, we were able to bring him into the world using a gestational surrogate. And the egg donor, how we got the egg donor, we found a friend of ours who wanted to help us, and we found a friend who wanted to be a surrogate. We decided not to go through all the agencies because I guess I'm a banker by trade, and I wanted to try to keep the costs down as much as I could, so I tried my best to piece it all together. That may work for some of you, but others it may not work for you, because there's a lot that you have to consider. You have to keep, it's a lot of moving pieces. For example, our first egg donor, throughout the journey we realized that she was too old, and then our first surrogate, she was also too old, but we already had eggs and embryos frozen. And then the first clinic we used, we paid an advance fee, and then 3 months into the process they filed bankruptcy. And then it's a very unique journey. But through it all, we wound up with another egg donor, another clinic, another surrogate, through an online community of wonderful angels and surrogates. And as a result of the first time we became, the last time we became pregnant, our last 3 embryos were implanted into our surrogate, our gestational surrogate, and we were expecting twins. So whenever you talk about your legal paperwork and you're asked to confront all these issues about what would happen if, and there are very complicated issues that you have to contend with. What happens if? I won't even list them all, but there are a lot of issues that you have to confront up front. And our firstborn is an example of that, because our surrogate went into premature labor and our twins were born at 26 weeks. And one of them didn't survive. So our oldest son, Jacob, is a surviving twin. It's a very difficult journey, but our 11-year-old is happy and healthy, and the best visual aid I can give you is on my wedding ring on my finger could go up to. He was so tiny it would fit up on top of his left arm. So whatever. So it's very tiny. So then fast forward. That's good news. It was a very rough journey, but fast forward several years, and we also wanted to have a journey where when our kids grew up, they would know that. Who the women were that helped bring them in. So we have a relationship now where the surrogate and the egg donor we're Facebook friends and we see them occasionally. So fast forward to our second child, and our gestational surrogate who delivered our twins, and then we became closer, her and her husband, and her kids were older. So she became our traditional surrogate for our second child. And by that time, we kind of exhausted all of our funds. And so I told her, I said, well, I don't really know how I'm going to be able to afford this. And that's when she told me about the turkey baster method. And we had a barbecue one summer. And it's so true. We were expecting it to be 12 months of trial and error. And the first time it took. And so I know. So if you went in doubt, have a barbecue. I'll probably stop there, but every journey is different. Oh, there's more. So we're happy parents of 2 boys.
That was very entertaining. How am I going to follow that up? My name is Veronica Bowers. I cannot believe that I'm at an LGBT center and have my roots showing. I told my mother when I got on the plane, I had 2 days notice, there was no chance of me getting in. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I had twin girls for a gay couple that lives in Paris in April. Is this really loud? It seems really loud.
There you go.
Okay, better. I had twin girls for a gay couple that lives in Paris in April. They're beautiful little girls, and I am really lucky to have their whole family in my life. As a surrogate, I think a lot of women go into surrogacy and they say they've always wanted to be a surrogate their whole lives. They've heard about it, they had an aunt that did it or something. I was not that person. I loved having my own children, and I had never really given surrogacy a thought until I watched this documentary. Don't we all watch documentaries and become activists on something? I watched this documentary that really inspired me, and it was about this lesbian couple who used a surrogate to have a baby, and the surrogate lied about everything. She said that she was, 27. Well, she was 37. She said she was in perfect health. She was missing a kidney. And I was like, this is horrible. I cannot believe there are people out there that do this. And I had 2 8-pound, 10-ounce babies, both of them, both born on their due dates. And I thought, man, I have big, healthy babies. I should do this. I can make people really, really happy. So I, started doing some researching. Told my husband one day, I said, I think I want to be a surrogate. And he's like, "Yeah, okay." Sure you do, like everything else. So I started doing some research and found an agency that I just really fell in love with. So that is first bit of advice: find an agency you love and you really, really trust. They will help you find that perfect surrogate. And finding a surrogate, just like finding intended parents, is a lot like dating. You're going to, no, I'm not into her, and they're not really what I'm looking for. And then you'll meet, and it's, you'll find that perfect person, and you'll know it when you feel that way. So if you're not certain about somebody that is brought to you as a surrogate, there's probably somebody else out there that's a better fit for you. So anyway, I found an agency that I loved, and they introduced me to Bruno and Christoph after probably about 2 months of being listed with them, and we Skyped and became immediate friends, and they came down and we all met. I live in Oregon, which is a very surrogacy-friendly state, just so you know. So we all met and became very close friends, and the next thing I know, I was knocked up with 2 twin girls. And it was a really exciting time for all of us. And my husband and my 2 children that I have were all very involved and very excited, and my whole family was very involved. Bruno and Christoph, who are my intended parents, or were my intended parents, and they ended up staying at my parents' farm the whole time. I mean, after the girls were born, they stayed there for 6 weeks with the girls afterwards. So I got to bring them breast milk and hold the girls every day and be really involved. And it was a really amazing experience. So, I'm certain for those of you that move forward with this and want to find your surrogate, there is that perfect person out there for you that will help this become this loving family, or whatever it is that you're searching for. I knew that I had to be very close with my intended parents for the rest of my life, and I talked to them probably more than I should. But I love it. And all right, I got you 2 minutes. Thank you. 2 minutes left.
Keep going.
So, be really clear about what it is that you want, what you're hoping for, as far as like long-term commitment, and stick true to that. Because when Bruno and Christoph told me that they're okay with me being in their lives forever, I was serious about that. I booked my plane tickets to Paris, which is where I will be turning 30 this year, and I'm staying with them. So one more quick little plug. I do work with Northwest Surrogacy Center, and you can go look on their website and see the documentary that I was in. It's under the blog section. It's a 1-hour-long French documentary. There are subtitles, sorry. But it's really entertaining, and it shows emotionally how involved and how much trust there is in the relationship that you build with your surrogate. If you have any questions, I will be upstairs later.
Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause? I do want to open up for questions in a second, but I wanted to ask both women on the panel about, Veronica, you mentioned that you have a husband and children. How did you explain your surrogacy? How do you explain your surrogacy to your family?
To my children?
To your children, and what was your husband's participation? He says very supportive.
Oh, he was very supportive. He has to be. The partner, your surrogate's partner in this has to be as fully committed as you are. Because they're the ones that are rubbing your feet at night. And he did. And it was mine and my husband's pregnancy, and we were then giving the babies back to their real parents, but it was our pregnancy together. And then my children, who were 1 and 4 at the time, just thought it was really cool. They loved Bruno and Christoph. We were very open and honest with all of them from the beginning. I mean, my 1-year-old's too young to know any different, but my son was, he really got it. And, you know, he got to see me get the shots every night for 6 months. And he, you know, we just always told him, well, you know, it's because mommy's gonna have babies for Bruno and Christoph. And there was never really any other question than that. He still has never asked, you know, why did I give them a child? He just thinks that, you know, when 2 people love each other, they get to have babies, whether it's through me or somebody else.
How was your family support?
My husband was obviously very supportive, and I was one of those people where I knew for a long time this was something I wanted to do. So he knew before we even got married this was something I was going to do. And with my daughter, when I started, she was 15 months old, so she was a little too young to understand. But as she got older, and we also had books on it, different things to explain it to her at her level. And I just, you know, explained to her that there are some people that, you know, don't have the right parts and they need help from somebody like mommy to help them, you know, have a family. And the last time I said that, she's like, well, that's because they're not girls. And I'm like, no, yeah, it is, you know, the key problems. It is, you know, that is the main issue, I guess. And to her, it's just normal. She doesn't, you know, she's not traumatized or, you know, anything like that. To her, it's just a normal way to, and I think it helps, you know, children learn a lot by what you show them, and I hope that I'm showing her, you know, altruism and caring, because this is, you know, why we went into this. I knew I wasn't going to do, you know, I wasn't going to cure cancer, but I could do something to help somebody else in a really important way. And that was something I wanted to do with my life.
Thank you so much. So does anybody have any questions? Yes.
My question's for the surrogates. 2 parts. First part is, as a surrogate, do you ever have second thoughts? And the second part is, what can we do as IPs to help you through those challenges?
So the question, I just want to repeat the question for the video. The first part is, have you ever had second thoughts? And the second part is, what can you do for IPs to help them, for intended parents, for you guys to help your carriers through the process?
Second thoughts about what? Carrying twins? I had never had second thoughts. Once I was, I mean, especially once I met Bruno and Christoph. I mean, sure, before I met my intended parents, it was like, man, do I really want to do this? I really want to be in a bikini next summer, and you know, you think those things. But then you meet those intended parents, and it's like a bond forever. I cannot explain it. And again, that's the experience that I wanted, and that's what I got. So no, I never had second thoughts ever. And I think I would imagine that most intended parents worry that the surrogate's going to have trouble handing over the baby because she's been carrying it for 9 months. Yes? No? Okay. No trouble there. I don't want to bring home twin girls.
And no, I never had second thoughts. It wasn't something I regretted doing ever, so. So yeah, no, it was just, you know, once you, I mean, I think one thing you can do to help is just like the other, like you said, just stay true to what you say you're going to do. You know, like if you're going or needing contact, then, you know, do that, send pictures if you're going to do that. You know, things like that.
What was your second question?
What can you do to help IPs through, did you do hand-holding with your guys?
Like literally, or?
Like emotionally?
Literally, yeah. You know, I think probably as a surrogate, I imagine she would feel the same way. We've had children before, so it's not really a big deal to us. So for first-time parents, you know, you do a little bit of hand-holding, and there's a lot of trust there, though, that they know that they trust you because you've done it before. And I didn't expect anything other than support from my intended parents. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I'm glad that you mentioned what I think a lot of us have as a fear in the process is that the carrier is going to change your mind. But Shannon, my carrier, said that her greatest fear was the day that we left the hospital, because we had created this huge, amazing relationship, and she didn't know what it was going to look like after that. We had talked about it, and she's still a part of our lives, and it's wonderful. And we see her kids. But at that point, I don't think she trusted us, or that was her concern, that we would continue with the relationship that we described. Have you guys talked about the future relationship that you'll have with the children, and how did you negotiate that?
Well, they lived with my parents for 6 weeks after they were born. So I just never had any concerns. There's so much honesty that I think goes into that relationship even before the babies are born. And keep in mind, they lived in Paris. After the girls were born a little bit early, it took them 4 days to get to the girls after they were born. So I was the one doing kangaroo time with them in the hospital. Again, I did not want to bring them home. But I've never had any concerns. I get to see the girls as often as I want. We Skype. Like I said, we are going to visit each other. I'm not concerned at all, but keep up with what you're going to say. If you know you don't want a surrogate or a third wheel, whatever you want to call it, in your life for the rest of your life, make sure you find the surrogate that doesn't want that either. I want to be involved.
I don't think we ever talked about it really long term per se, but I think with my two couples, it just happened organically. With my first Sura baby, she is 3. And they still send pictures and we're in contact, but it wasn't anything we discussed at length or, put in writing as to we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And I've seen her, she lives on the East Coast, so she's farther away. But I have been down to see her there, and they've come up here once. So, I still get updates and everything. And then obviously Luke is, a lot closer, and I've seen him as well.
When we were being matched, we had conversations around what do we see happening in the long run? But we just really didn't know. At least we didn't know from our perspective, because we're just meeting this person who knows where the journey's going to go. But what we found throughout the process is that we really became close. Like, I really like Terry and Glenn and Haley and their family, and so we're happy to visit each other. We had a shower. We had a shower together for our first son, for Luke, before he went with Terry, and our whole family and everyone was there, and Terry's family was there, and we kind of all just got to know each other, and we realized throughout the process, hopefully you agree, that we actually like each other and spending time together. So, when we had our second surrogate, Laura, who actually also wanted to come, but she's sick, so she couldn't make it. When we were going through that process, we had a shower there, and Terry came to that shower too. And so we've stayed in contact, and it really hasn't been anything that's been, we should do this or we should do that. It's been like, hey, why don't you guys come down? It's been a bit too long, or let's visit, or we're coming up to Northern California, or a little bit further north, so let's just visit it. It just worked for us in both instances. So we just the relationship for us just developed with both surrogates, and we've just become friends throughout that process and are happy to stick together. And one thing that I wanted to add that you were talking earlier is just a lot of people talk about the intended parents and the surrogates and the agencies and egg donors, but people don't always talk about the husbands of the surrogates in that situation, or the partner. And I have to say, the two men who are married to Terry and Laura are amazing guys, because they're living with the women that are their wives that are pregnant with a baby that's not their own. And in both cases, they're guys who know this is important to their wife, and so therefore they're supporting their wife through this process. And to me, that was really impressive, because I never really thought of that until we met these people, these men, and realized these are really awesome guys, right? And so just kind of a shout out to the dads.
Questions? Yes.
So I'm curious, do you feel differently than your own pregnancy? If that makes any sense, right? So, and then do you stick to it? Do you do anything different than what would be yours? And then the second part of the question is, later on in the stage of pregnancy, when do you need the most support from the intended parents? Are there early stage, later stage, middle stage?
Start. Okay. So,
Did everyone get the question?
No.
Can you say one more time?
Do you feel differently than in your own pregnancy in the beginning versus being a surrogate? And do you sync do you need more support in the beginning or later or in the middle from the intended parents?
The only thing I did, I would say differently, was I would have the intended parents, if they wanted to, both of my intended parents wanted to have like them read stories, and so I would put that on my belly so that the child can hopefully hear and then get used to their daddy's voices. As far as, I guess, the pregnancy, I would say in some ways it's less stressful because you don't have to worry about, the nursery or, waking up every 2 hours, things like that, that you don't have to, that are not even part of, that. So that part, I think, is easier, and it's also very, exciting because it's not just you and your spouse raising a child, you're helping somebody create a new family, and hopefully that they're going to be there to see, their child be born. And things like that. And as far as support, I would say the most support, maybe just towards the end, being there for the birth if you could make it. That was to me was really important because I wanted to see their faces and things like that. And I didn't have that in my first journey, and with my second journey, that was probably one of the most amazing experiences, was to see them become parents in that moment and have them over their baby for the first time.
I don't think I did anything different with my surrogacy than I did with my own pregnancies, except for I also had my intended parents sing songs and read books in French. So I could, the girls could get used to their voices. And that was really comforting to me, though. I wanted the girls to come out and recognize their dads. So I was really happy that we were able to do that. But I never felt differently about the pregnancy. I mean, who doesn't love a baby? I loved the big girls, from conception, because I loved their dads. And I felt there was nothing I did different. I sang to it, put lotion on my belly, talked about how cute they were.
Another question.
Yeah, this is for Terry. You mentioned that first you're an egg donor, then you're a surrogate, and then you're EC. Was that intentional, or as you went through each step, did your own preferences of how you wanted to share with other couples change, or how did you go from one? Does that make sense? Going from egg donor to GC.
For me, I guess it just it was in my mind, I really wanted to do a traditional surrogacy first, because I know you kind of, age-wise you have to, do that. And I wasn't opposed to gestational surrogacy. So I just kind of wanted to do the traditional first due to time constraints. But to me, the reason for that was I don't feel like parenting is this biological fiat. I think it's obviously the person who cares for the child and loves them every day. And so it didn't matter to me, if it had my genes or somebody else's, they were going to be, that child's parents forever. So that was sort of how that happened.
Yes.
To the two guys, did you feel like how did your relationship with your husbands, how did it influence your relationship with your husbands?
Everybody hear the question, how did the process influence fathers' relationships with their husbands?
Well, Jeff and I have been together for now 22 years now, and so when we started on this journey, we've been together for over 10. So, I mean, clearly it brings you closer together, and especially whenever the death of a child and the birth of a child on the same day, your relationship does go through some really interesting, twisty, turning moments. But overall, it does, you tend to really get to know them better. I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but I mean, sometimes it's the basic questions. Jeff happened to take my last name when we became parents. That was a discussion we thought it was going to be really difficult, and it was really very easy. Another discussion about whose sperm do we use is another question that, it's whenever we talk about those life-changing moments or those potential life-changing moments that could happen, and you tend to really understand and see your partner in a new way. So for us, I mean, we've been together 10 years when the journey started, and it brought us closer together.
We had
I mean, now we don't like each other.
been together for 10 years. And so I like to think we have an open relationship where we talk about lots of things. And going through this process, we had to really talk through and align on how we felt about a lot of different types of things. Because when we're being matched with a surrogate through our agency, you have to talk through things like, like what if there are complications with the pregnancy, and what are your thoughts? And we had to align on a lot of this. But I've been really fortunate that I found someone who really understands me well, and we just work well together. And so there really wasn't anything where we disagreed significantly, but we had to really ask ourselves a lot of questions and talk to each other and really make sure that we were aligned on things. And I think that where the true test in the relationship comes is just once that baby, like when leading up to the baby being born, I was nervous at times, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? How's Terry doing? Or how's Laura doing? But then once the baby comes, and I'm like, holy crap! Like we have to take care of this child and not to feed it, and I don't know what to do. And I'm not sleeping. I'm exhausted. And there were moments like parents don't always talk about it. They say, oh yeah, we didn't sleep, but it's miserable. Like I was exhausted the whole time. And yes, it was wonderful, and the child was amazing, but like the kid doesn't know really us yet. It's like, I need food, I need to be changed, and in one moment Matt was like, David, just go take a nap, go sleep. And then I woke up from that nap, and I was like, oh, the birds are singing, and there's sunshine outside, and life is good. It's just, it was just the whole parenthood, I think, for us has just been the bigger life-changing event than going through the process. I know that before we went through the process, I had a lot of uncertainty, like, what's this going to be like? But once we actually met the people that we would be working with, then it all just felt right, and it just made sense. And it just was like, well, yeah, why wouldn't we do it this way? Like, and I'm just really glad that we met the two, the amazing people that we did.
I'm just going to add, I guess I was expecting some questions around the mechanics or the legalities or things, but I'm getting a theme from the questions today about relationships between the parents, relationships between the surrogates. And I have to say, I mean, those are worthy questions, and they are important. But it's like dating. When you meet the man or the partner that you want to spend the rest of your life with, believe me, we all know it's work to be in a relationship. It's work to make it work. And it's the same way with the surrogate. And whenever you decide, when you draw your boundaries of what works best for you and your partner, for Jeff and I, we knew we wanted to have an open relationship with our surrogate. And we also wanted to do this, and there was geography and emotional boundaries. And once we drew those, it is a relationship journey, but you tend to know it early on. And then it just begins to unfold. And an example would be, if you'll indulge me just for a minute, for our first pregnancy, we had heard stories, and keep in mind this was 11 or 12 years ago. The day zero, when the baby or babies are born, we had this first day document written up because we'd heard that we don't want there to be any misunderstanding, right? Because the baby will be born, and you're going to do this, and we'll be in this room, and we'll be over there. We tried to lay it all out. And of course, in our instance, that it was a premature birth, so that document was not needed. But you fast forward 4 years, and Taylor was born, and our surrogate, and we were talking like a week before she was due. What are we going to do on the day? Well, should we talk about that? And I'm like, just keep him until he's 2. I'm busy. And she's like, So it just begins. You form a relationship, and then she decided that she was going to pump for 6 months, and we hadn't talked about that. I'm like, geez. And one day we get a call 6 months later. She says, I'm ready for a margarita. I'm done. Okay.
Yes.
I have a question for you. Did you start doing the legal paperwork for your traditional surrogate before you got pregnant, or was it like just for this turkey baster and then?
Well, just to be, I'm sure there's a medical term. I don't know what the medical term is for turkey basting.
Turkey baster?
Yeah.
That's a medical.
That was our second child. So those were legalities there. There's an attorney's name that will be up on the 4th floor. That was our attorney. We hired her for the traditional surrogacy contracts, egg donor contract, gestational surrogate for the first pregnancy. And then she also covered the legalities for the traditional surrogate. But yeah, we covered all those bases ahead of time. Did I answer your question? Okay.
So,
Yes.
you probably started with a scenario in mind from how it began and how it ended at the starting of the process. But, I mean, I guess for all four of you, where did you end up when all was over? How much did you deviate because of reasons you couldn't control from where you started and where you finally ended with your children?
Well, I'll be quick, but I touched on mine earlier. Our journey resembled like a downhill mogul skier. I mean, it was all over the place. Our egg donor was was different. Our clinic was different, and our surrogate was different. So the first journey was vastly different. Oh, sorry. Our first journey was vastly different. Our second one, we kind of knew what we were in for, and so there were no deviations from that. So ours was crazy the first time and very simple the next.
For the first time ever when I was surrogate, I thought it was going to go a certain way and it went completely different. I mean, it was great with the parents and stuff, but it was a really difficult pregnancy because it was twins, and so there were medical issues that came up that I never dreamed I would be on. I never thought in a million years I would be on pelvic rest the entire pregnancy. Sorry, I had to mention it, guys. You don't think about those things, and your husband certainly does not think that you're going to be on pelvic rest. You guys know what that means, right? The entire pregnancy, and they're pumping your body full of these hormones. The doctor's back there.
That's why the husbands are saints in this story.
And so you're going crazy, and you can't do anything, because it was a really complicated pregnancy, and it was all over the board. And I'm a type A personality. I wanted to plan everything. I was driving all of the OB doctors through my practice crazy. I wanted a planned C-section date. I knew they were going to go on vacation, and then the girls came 2 weeks early, so it didn't matter. So things will happen, and you just really got to learn how to roll with it.
Good question.
With my first journey, it was a very uneventful, pregnancy, but the delivery was what, everything kind of went downhill. Started out with, they had a due date, and they're like, oh, okay, it was the July 20th, so like, okay, we'll be there July 19th. And I'm like, this is not that kind of thing. So I guess they thought it was, but then they did make plans to come down earlier, and then we ended up getting induced, and they weren't there. And then eventually, you're in pain, you kind of like, okay, whatever, let's get through this. But I had in my head, I'm going to deliver this, they're going to be there, everything's going to be beautiful. And then the baby, she ended up having a medical complication with a major heart defect that we didn't know about before she was born. And so she had to be whisked to like San Francisco, and I'm in Santa Rosa, and the parents are there, and so there are things that happen, and you can't control them. And usually things like that don't happen, but that was sort of our story. And I mean, it all ended well, and she's beautiful and healthy now, which is all that matters. So yeah, I mean, things can happen, and not every journey is going to go perfectly smoothly. So just be prepared that that can happen, but you'll still get where you want to happen, which is a family.
For us, we were, I guess, really fortunate that the two experiences we had kind of went relatively smoothly throughout the whole process. I mean, there were, the thing that I take away from this all, it's just life. You can't control it. And if you're someone who's used to controlling every aspect of your life up until that moment, this is like in the hands of whatever else you believe in, right? It's like, you can't control it, it just happens. And so we were really fortunate that both pregnancies went well. Our first, with Terry, Luke had to be induced about a week, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks early. Yeah, 1 week, right, 1 week early, and we went to the hospital for the checkup, and they're like, yeah, he's not really growing in the amount. He's like, he's fully developed, everything's fine, but he's going to do better out than in at this point. So why don't you guys come back in a few hours and we'll have a baby. We had been prepared, we brought everything just in case, but so like, okay, I guess it's happening today. So we just kind of went with it, and that's what we just did, we just went with it. Whatever happened, we just made decisions in the moments that we could make those decisions and then move forward. And then since then, there's been a lot of decisions to make. When we were lucky that we had breast milk for the first few months for both boys, and so at some point you have to decide formula, which brand. Like, there's lots of questions, and we just made the decision as we got to it, made the best decision we could, and then moved on. And but again, both pregnancies went relatively smoothly, and we were really fortunate. So
yeah, Charlie. you've talked a lot about the open relationship you've had with the surrogates. Can you talk a little bit about whether there's been relationships with the egg donor, the one of you who is an egg donor, you've stayed in touch? And then the other question, I was really glad that we had experience of people with twins, and you did say you might rethink about carrying twins, because it's often people's dream being, couples, okay, we're gonna, one of us will do two embryos, one from each of us will do twins. It's efficient, it's financially efficient, but I always say talk to the doctors.
Do you want to answer the egg donor question?
My journey as an egg donor, I didn't have any contact with them, so I do not know. I know they got pregnant. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl. And then when I was a traditional surrogate, I also didn't know what happened there as their egg donor because we did do a transfer. But I don't have any details on my egg donor.
We use an egg donor for our oldest, and Jacob, our 11-year-old, he's just now understanding the facts of life right now, that and body noises. And so but we answer all questions. We're very open. He knows, both boys know our surrogate because of our relationship. But the egg donor, Jeff and I both have a relationship with her. And when the boys are older and they understand what that means, but right now, their association is just through the woman who gave birth. And their understanding is very healthy and very normal. But when they get older, we have maintained a relationship with the egg donors. When the time is right, then she's ready and we're ready.
And as far as carrying twins, it was a really cool experience. Don't get me wrong. It was, I was really happy for them because they each got a child at the exact same time. The girls get to grow up together. Plus, I understand that surrogacy is very expensive, and so it's kind of like a twofer, right? You get two for the price of one almost. This is a really good deal. But twins are a higher risk pregnancy for your surrogate. You have a chance of those children being born earlier, although I know I have lots of friends that are surrogates that carry twins and have to be induced at 38 weeks. I was not that surrogate. I went into labor at 34 weeks and 4 days. And it was just a more complicated pregnancy. There were higher risks of things like a subchorionic hemorrhage, or at 12 weeks, they were doing an NT scan, and one of the twins had an enlarged nubile neck measurement, which is could be an indicator of having Down syndrome or trisomy 13, 21, trisomy something. And so, the parents had to make that choice because there's one twin that looks great, and then there's one twin that looks okay. So they went ahead and did an amniocentesis, which put both of the twins at risk. They both survived, but there's a lot more to consider if your surrogate is carrying twins.
Matt and I had that conversation. We thought, we'll just, we'll work with an egg donor, and I'll talk about her in a minute, and we'll fertilize half with Matt, half with me. We'll put one embryo of each, and there you go. And then when we really started to think about it and go through the process, we're like, there's just a lot of risk. And so what we decided we would do is we just told the embryologist, just choose one of the embryos and place in one embryo. That's it. And they said, and what our embryologist, what our doctors were saying was that because we were working with a woman who has already had successful pregnancy and we had the eggs from a 21-year-old donor, odds were that however many embryos we put in, that's what would come out. And we thought, okay, at the end of this, we were like, okay, we need to make a decision for us that's the right decision for the child and the surrogate. In that sense, we wanted to make sure everything was safe and healthy. And so we just decided we'll just put one in and see what happens. And we were really fortunate that one embryo that we put in took, and that became Luke, and then the second one became Joseph. And so that's how we went about doing that. As far as the egg donor, our egg donor was anonymous, although she had to come out here for, to do the retrieval of the eggs. And so we talked to the agency and we said, I know that she's anonymous, but if it's possible, we'd just love to meet her so we could at least have, know more. We saw her picture, we knew a lot about her information because there was all the online profile. And so they said, okay, well, we'll check with the egg donor and we'll ask her. And she said, sure. So she came out here, and the meeting was facilitated by a social worker, which was the requirement of the egg donor agency, which we were happy with. We're happy that there were a lot of professionals involved in the process because we didn't know what we were doing. And so we got to meet her, and they said, oh, by the way, she has her companion with her since she's out here for 10 days to this medical procedure, and it's her dad. And we're like, oh, shit, we're going to we even were the same age as her dad, but that we weren't. He was so we walk into this office, and then there's this woman, and by that time, all the paperwork had been signed. A surrogate and the egg donor were all on the medication so that we could go with the process. And so we couldn't really change our minds, right? So like, what if we don't like her? What if she doesn't like us? What happens? And so what I kept coming back to is to say, it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is that by meeting the egg donor, we'll have more of a story that we can use to tell our kids when we ultimately have kids. And so for me, it was about what's the right thing for the child. It doesn't matter if I'm uncomfortable meeting this person, whatever. So we walked in, we met her, and she was awesome. She was terrific. Her dad was great. We got to ask her dad questions like, "What'd you say when she said she wanted to do this?" And we got to ask her. So like, when we said to her, we said, when the kids get older, at that time we only maybe had one. When the child gets older, what would you like us to say when they ask about you? And she's like, people think that I do this, that I might be doing this for the money. And you know what? Sure, the money's nice. I don't have to ask my dad for more money for college. She's like, but like, my mom's a school teacher, and she has friends, and we love kids, and she has friends who can't have kids. And she's like, I'm 21. There's not a lot of things that I can do, but I can help somebody have a family. And so for her, that was her motivation, and it was genuine. And so when our kids turn 18, they can contact the agency, and if she's willing to be met, they can meet each other. But even if they never meet, we at least know that this was an amazing young woman who was willing to do this to help us have a family. And so it just worked out. And then with the second pregnancy, we told the embryology doctor, it'd be great if you could, if there's another embryo that's mine, since our first son Luke was with Matt's DNA. We said it'd be great if the second one, but it doesn't really matter. And what I thought that it would matter before we had kids, but then once people say, well, do you care differently for one kid or the other because one's biologically yours? And absolutely not. Like I don't even think about it. I mean, yes, our first son is blonde, and there's no way that I could make a blonde child. But I'm like, I don't care. He's my son. I love this kid. It doesn't matter to me. And I think that's the important part, is that biology really is irrelevant in this situation. It's about that life that we've been caring for since, before he was born.
Can I just say, one of the things that we were most surprised about, I'm going to pivot off what you just said. Jeff and I were most surprised, and the question comes from well-meaning, close friends, educated. So I'm not talking about some ill-spirited people, but more often than I care to admit, our friends would come up to us, and when they heard the story, they're very supportive, they're very open, they're very affirming. But the question comes out, well, who's the real dad? And the questions that you'll get, if you get that far in the journey, you're going to get some very bizarre questions. That's one of them. So
you're going to get rude questions.
Yeah. We had, when we were expecting twins, when our surrogate was carrying twins, one of the questions we got, and you guys are going to think I'm making this up, but you are going to just be amazed. These are not mean people. These are family and friends that we've known for years. When they discovered we were expecting twins, they more than one time, oh, well, you're going to keep both?
No, we're going to let the surrogate choose her favorite.
That's true. The first time we were taken aback, and we answered, in a very loving and firm way. Well, of course we're going to keep both. By the fifth time, we're like, no, we're not.
Your surrogate will get that question too. Well, are you going to keep her?
Yeah. We're going to keep
That's people just don't know. This is not something that most people probably don't know someone who's gone through this process, so they don't really know. They don't know what to ask. And so I've just always taken that step back. It's like when people would ask years ago, like, oh, what was it like coming out? Right now, maybe not as big of a deal as maybe it was in the early 90s or 80s, whatever. But it's like people ask questions, and I just assume they don't know. And so they'll say, well, who's the father? I'm like, well, we're both his father, but here's, Matt's biologically that. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's what I mean. I'm like, no, it's okay. I'm just helping you know the right words to use, or the words that make me feel, I would like you to use. But the thing is, I was nervous about what's the hospital experience going to be like, because our boys were born in Santa Rosa or also in Antigua, not in San Francisco or wherever. And I was like, well, how is the hospital going to treat us? How will doctors treat us along the way? How will people we met? And you know what? they were awesome. They couldn't care less. They were interested in this. Oh, this is exciting. This is amazing. And I mean, talk about your experience there, but like they were just generally very professional, very supportive, and I think in fact we actually got extra attention and care. And one of the things that was special is the midwife who delivered our first son, Luke, with Terry, saying, "Oh, I love surrogate deliveries," and we said, "Why?" She said, "Oh, I was a surrogate." And it was just really nice and special that, like, I think that people were really excited, and it was just a non-issue in the location people. We also, when we were working with our agency, wanted to make sure we chose surrogates from states that were supportive. Like, there's certain places where we wouldn't have wanted to go through the process because the laws were not very friendly.
Last question, yeah.
My question is for the men, actually. I was wondering why you chose surrogacy over a different method of having kids, like adoption.
Well, we went down both paths initially. We went down the path for adoption and went to some meetings that were available to us, and then we concurrently went down the path of surrogacy. But what we discovered, it was just one of those things where the events just began to unfold. We went far down the path of adoption, but then the surrogacy path, we had a friend step up and say, "Well, I'd like to do it," and we're like, "Okay, check that off. There's an egg donor, check." And then we started asking around. So it just seemed to be for us, we were open to whatever. And then the surrogacy path just unfolded quicker, I guess. It seemed quicker, and then 18 months later, it didn't seem so quick.
Yeah, we started on the adoption process as well, and then we started to realize that surrogacy was an option. We looked down that path, and I think for us, we really wanted to be a part and invested in the whole process. And the thing that was always in the back of my mind is that, like, the birth mother in an adoption can change her mind. And I felt like I don't know that I could handle that, and I also didn't know what that would be like. That I could be as invested in the whole pregnancy if I knew there's a possibility that anything could happen. And looking back now, I'm like, you know what? Either way, whatever makes sense for you or your circumstances or your relationship, whatever, great. Like for me, the ultimate goal is I'm just happy and grateful that I'm able to be a father. So like whatever happens, as long as, for me what was important, as long as no one's being exploited and there's nothing bad happening in the process, which is why at first we weren't approaching the surrogacy path, because I'm like, well, why would a woman want to do this? Because she's just doing it for money, of course. But then actually when we got to talk to surrogates and met, people were like, oh, actually there are really kind, generous people who enjoy being pregnant and who find motivation helping others. Laura, who's not here, our second surrogate, for her motivation was she has a big family. She has 2 boys. She wanted to find a couple who already had a child who she wanted to provide a sibling for a kid because she knew how important it was for her to have siblings. And so that's one of the motivating factors for her. So for her to see Luke and Joseph together is an incredibly rewarding experience to know that she gave our son a brother, which is, it's really amazing when you really think about what people will do for each other.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your story.